Today I'm talking about some records that scared the hell out of me as a kid. Of course, now looking back, I realize that was the whole point. It was this very clever and calculating marketing that propelled these albums to the forefront and into the stratosphere and made them very desirable for teenage boys like me. The record labels definitely understood their demographics. Nothing wrong with that. These are all great albums. Let's discuss. Alright, first on the list, and I think this probably universally scared the hell out of anyone who heard this. And of course, this is the debut album from Black Sabbath. From the ominous figure on the front to the crack of thunder that kicks off the album to the lyrics of the title track, this, dear 33ers, may be the scariest album of all time. I've talked about the cover in depth in the previous video, but you have this witchy looking woman standing alone in the woods in what appears to be a haunted underworld, staring out at you, clutching something. It was enough to let your imagination run wild. So again, I did a video on this album cover. You're gonna want to check it out. I will leave a link, but just quickly, this was shot in front of a 15th century watermill in the UK. The model was Louisa Livingstone. She was a petite woman, stood only 5 foot tall. She was only 18 or 19 years old when this image was shot. And if that wasn't scary enough, if this cover alone wasn't scary enough from the lyrics and the album, you also had this pretty crazy inner sleeve. There's this inverted cross right there. A poem on here that talks about the rain falling and the veils of darkness surrounding the blackened tree. I'm not going to get into all this, but it was definitely pretty spooky, man. And in addition to the title track, you had a song called The Wizard, right, about this mysterious man. You had N.I.B., a song about Lucifer falling in love. I mean, just overall, super scary album. I guess it kind of still spooks me to this day if I'm in the right mood, but I love this record, the debut from Black Sabbath. Another album that as a kid anyway scared the hell out of me is another Black Sabbath record. This is Mob Rules, came out in 1981. This was their second album with Ronnie James Dio. And it wasn't so much the songs on here that scared the living daylights out of me. It was this album cover. So to put this in context, I picked this up probably when I was 12 or 13 years old. I was a Catholic school boy. I went to church. I went to mass. I knew all about that stuff. Then I got this. And there's a lot of things, if you're not familiar with this album cover, on in the middle there in the blood, you see half a skull. It looks like Lucifer's skull. You see a cross hanging from the side. And down here, I remember staring at this as a kid. You can kind of almost make out the words Aussie on the ground. Some people say it says kill Aussie. I think I heard people say Aussie die. I don't know. I never saw kill Aussie, but I definitely see the word Aussie. So again, super spooky. I mean, it's a great album. The music itself, I mean, fantastic. The title track, Voodoo, Country Girl, Turn Up the Night, great tracks. But it was the album cover that really freaked me out. Here's another album from the 80s that was probably universally despised by parents at the time. And I included this on my list of albums that scared the hell out of me, though. If I'm honest, I'm not sure if this album cover actually scared me as a kid. More so, I was probably fascinated by this artwork. I think it's one of the best album covers Derek Riggs had ever done for Iron Maiden. If this album cover didn't spook you, then the lyrics and the introduction to the title track, Number of the Beast, certainly would. With the chorus being 666, Number of the Beast. Again, for a quote-unquote good Catholic school boy like me, that was a bit over the top. Again, for whatever reason, I wasn't as freaked out by this as compared to the Black Sabbath record. I don't know why. This one seemed more tongue-in-cheek maybe, but definitely ranks up there as one of the best album covers of all time.
Channel 33 RPM.
Today's video is brought to you by the Channel 33 RPM store. I keep prices as low as I can and I ship worldwide. Proceeds support this channel and help it continue to grow. Now, I don't think any list of scary album covers and scary albums would be complete without something from Slayer. For this video, I selected their 1983 debut album, Show No Mercy. I remember seeing the promos for this album at the time, again, being a young kid, and there was images of the band there, like upside down crosses on. I was like, wow, this is pretty wild. Who are these guys? And of course, the music kind of matched that whole image. And it really was an image, right? Slayer were pretending to be Satanists. It was all marketing. They're just trying to gain exposure and set themselves apart from others. And that whole satanic thing, for whatever reason, was quite big in the heavy metal community in like 82 and 83. And this was all part of that. It's a raw album. The band was trying to make an impact, but they definitely did. This album definitely left an impact on me, made an impact on me, and it's definitely an album cover, an album that scared the hell out of me. Another one from 1983, we got the debut album from Metallica. And again, it wasn't the music on here that scared me or freaked me out so much as it was the album artwork. And I don't really hear a lot about this album cover, and people talk about spooky or scary album covers. But it really is. I mean, if you think about it, particularly as a kid when I saw this, and again, I saw ads for it in the metal magazines, and I was fascinated by it, thinking, like, what's going on here? You got a pool of blood, you got a hammer, and you see someone's shadow either reaching for the hammer or putting it down. And the album title is called Kill 'Em All. So my mind, of course, as a kid, your imagination runs wild. And you think, well, what happened here? And I always thought it was someone who kind of walked into a house and killed a family or something. I don't know. That's just my interpretation of it. But it was definitely an impactful album cover. So I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this one. Because again, I don't hear a lot of people talking about this album cover being spooky or scary or violent or anything. But it certainly left an impression on me. I'm going to show you a couple Ozzy Osbourne records, because Ozzy and spookiness went hand in hand. And this is another one of those that I was fascinated by, and this cover and the record and the music. But this album cover, I mean, check it out. You got Ozzy the Madman. There's a child here kind of giggling. That kid, I believe, is Ozzy's son, Lewis. And there's like some ancient writing, or that's what my mind thought at the time right there. There's an upside down cross and a black cat. There's a lot going on there and a lot to digest. Of course, nowadays, this comes across as a bit cheesy, perhaps. Not a bit cheesy, it's totally cheesy. I don't know if you could get away with something like this today without people laughing at you, but at the time it was pretty crazy. And on the back, you have a cleaned up Ozzy here, but again, he's by this upside down cross. You got a dead person here, a black cat. And the packaging, even inside, kind of carried on that mysterious vibe with, I remember staring at all the stuff on the inside, trying to figure out or decipher what this all meant. It wasn't until years later that I learned the stuff down here was just gibberish. The artist created this bit too small, so he was rushed. I just literally put a bunch of gibberish there. But, I mean, to me, this was like some secret message from beyond the grave, all this writing. And the lyrics to all the songs are hand-lettered. And even the tunes on here, like Flying High Again, Ozzy talking about getting stoned. Again, as an 11-year-old, that was pretty far out. You Can't Kill Rock and Roll, talking about rock and roll being his religion and his law, talking about believer. He's a believer at the time. I was like, what's he a believer in? I'm sure Satan himself, right? Got the title track, Diary of a Madman. You had the song SATO, and I was trying to figure out what that stood for, and I figured S had to be Satan. So this whole thing, I spent a lot of time as a kid just digesting this album artwork. There's a lot going on this one. One more Ozzy album that freaked me out as a kid was 1982's Speak of the Devil. This was a live album. And of course, looking back at it now, it's completely cheesy. You got Ozzy here with fangs, and it looks like he's got jelly or something in his mouth. But at the time, of course, the whole rumor was that was bat guts, because Ozzy was in the headlines at the time for having bitten the head off a bat at a concert in the US, and they were obviously playing off of that controversy when they put this album cover together. The gatefold, again, pretty cheesy. It almost looks like it's out of focus, but it's Ozzy with the small person, the midget, I think the midget's name was Ronnie. And this cross here, though, the cropping on this I always thought was really weird. Ozzy is centered, but I always thought it should have been pushed over a little so you could see the cross. But again, you had the writing along the sides. I should do a video more in depth on these Ozzy albums, talking about the writing and what it actually says and means. But seeing this as a kid, like many of you, I'm sure, your imaginations run wild. You're like, what does all this stuff say? I mean, same as here. What's going on? And of course, this record, if the packaging wasn't enough to scare the crap out of me, the songs on here also went a long way to doing that. These are all Black Sabbath tracks, right? This is a live album full of Black Sabbath songs. And this may sound odd to some people, but this album was my introduction to that. A lot of that music. It was the first time I ever heard Symptom of the Universe, Snowblind, the title track, Black Sabbath. And on my young, impressionable mind, I was like, wow, this is something else. I've never heard anything like this before. And Ozzy sounded out of his skull on this record, whether he was drunk or stoned or a little bit of both. Like if you listen carefully, before they go into the song The Wizard, you hear Ozzy talking and he sounds confused, like he can't find his harmonica. So, as I said, between Ozzy being out of his skull, the artwork, the songs, this was definitely an album that scared the hell out of me. This next one I debated about whether to include it in the video because it didn't scare me at all, but it certainly scared my parents in this album cover when they saw the pentagram there. They were wondering what the hell their son was bringing home. I have to give them credit. They never confiscated the record from me. My mom just asked me what this was all about and how I felt about it, and they never took it away. I know a lot of parents would have, but they just kind of shrugged their shoulders. But it did spook them a bit. I know my mom was quite concerned when she saw this. For me, I was more fascinated by the whole imagery of Motley Crue and the way they dressed and the lyrics and the attitude, because the songs are all about women and running away from the cops. And that's really about it. Women and running away from the cops and partying. So, it's fascinating to me because I was so far removed from my home life and the world around me that it was just, to me, I just couldn't get enough of this. So, scary album. No, not for me, but for many parents it was back in the early to mid 80s. Motley Crue, Shout the Devil. All right, 33ers. Record companies sure knew what they were doing with these albums. Very clever and calculated marketing designed to get kids excited about these bands. What are some album covers that scared the hell out of you back in the day? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Be back again real soon. Till then, keep on spinning.